Welcome to the FNO InsureTech podcast, a place where movers and shakers from all points within the insurance ecosystem gather and discuss all things InsureTech. We talk about how technology and innovation are affecting and driving change in the industry. Here are your hosts, Lee Boyd and Rob Beller.
Hey, podcast world. Welcome to another stupendous, life-changing, earth-shattering, big episode of
FNO InsureTech with your host, Lee Boyd and Rob Beller.
That's right. We're co-hosts.
I said my name first. That's never happened.
How'd that feel?
It was weird. It was weird. Maybe Al can actually edit that and say your name first, so it just sounds right.
You don't have to say maybe. That's a standing order for Al to.
It'll happen. He knows.
So there's big news in the world of InsureTech today. Today we heard or received the announcement about Flywheel.
Yeah, Flywheel getting acquired.
Yeah,
by LexisNexis. That's a big deal.
By LexisNexis. That's a really big deal, and we're both super curious to know all the thinking behind that and what LexisNexis was thinking and what Cole was thinking and team. And we'll have to have them on for sure, right?
We would, and we talked earlier today and we talked about other companies that have been acquired. And we always want to know why. Like, what is the thought behind it? What is the acquirer? What are they thinking? And the acquiree, why are they going along? Like, what is the vision? What's the thought? I'd love to be a fly on the wall.
Because as we all know, when you're bought by private equity, that's one train of thought. Yeah. When you're bought by a strategic, and I guess you could call LexisNexis a strategic in this
scenario, I would assume.
It's just for that. I mean, they see a strategic value there, and that's exciting to know what's going on in their heads. And we will absolutely reach out to Cole, and big congratulations to him and the team.
Yeah, that's huge. So today we actually have on a bank.
Really?
Yeah. So we're talking
Why
about all
would
these
we
really
have a bank
cool,
on?
Well, we're talking about all these really cool InsureTechs, and today we have on a bank. But
it's new, right? But it must be brand new. It must be like
it's like 150-year-old bank.
You're
right. I think 156-year-old bank.
Why would the most prominent InsureTech podcast in the world have on a bank?
Because they're doing some really cool stuff in InsureTech. They consider themselves an arm, a branch of the bank, and they are doing some really cool things in InsureTech. And they are really revolutionizing the way that digital payments are done. And it's really cool. I'm really excited about it.
Who's joining us today? Because today you're in Indianapolis, Indiana.
I am. I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana, sitting beside our guest, right? They're on the podcast. I'm in the same room. You are not. You are very far away.
I'm very far away.
And that's all, I go the extra effort to come up here and to actually see these people in person.
You're such a good man, Lee.
I am.
No one would ever say that about me, so don't worry. You have no competition here.
So we have Commerce Bank. We have some people from Commerce Bank. We had Ed Fowler, insurance industry consultant, and Gary Goldsmith, vice president, insurance industry consultant. Both these guys, I've gotten to know them at a couple of conferences over the past year. They're just a hoot. They're a great time, and they really know their stuff. They have been in the insurance space for a very long time, and they're doing some really cool things here at the bank.
Right. And what I think that we'll hear, if I'm not mistaken,
probably
is that pretty much anything payments and insurance, they got you covered.
They got you
name
covered.
The direction, who it's going to, who's involved in it, where it comes from, who gets it, any of that, they got you covered.
They got you covered.
Why don't we stop talking? Which is the question that everyone listening to this right now is saying. Why don't they stop talking? So we're going to grant your wish and stop talking and go to our interview with Gary Goldsmith and Ed Fowler from Commerce Bank. Hey, everybody, we're here with our guests. There's an S on the end of that because we have two of them today. which just goes to show you, when you listen to our podcast, you get twice the information.
That's right.
In the same amount of time, which is pretty awesome. But that's not what you're here to hear about or what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about payments today, which are something that we all love and all love to be on the receiving side of. In particular, we have Ed Fowler and Gary Goldsmith from Commerce Bank. Hey, guys, how you doing?
Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us here.
Thanks so much.
Now, one of the cool things about today's podcast is, where are you guys today?
We are sitting in a conference room in Fishers, Indiana, at the Alacrity headquarters.
That's
World
right.
headquarters.
We're world headquarters, mostly in person.
And with the lighting, it's the Alacrity Lounge.
It is. It is a nice subdued lighting today.
And just so everybody knows, they're serving drinks in Indiana as we speak. Not true.
Not true.
And
Not true.
Lee, where are you today?
I'm here. I am with these two guys.
That's pretty cool.
So 3 out of 4 of us are actually in person, and then we're staring at you on a screen.
Lucky. You guys are so lucky.
Where are you, Rob?
Where are you, Rob?
I'm where I always am. I'm in my bunker in Sacramento, California.
You're sick, aren't you?
A little under the weather, so you'll have to excuse that today.
No, I'm glad you're there.
But enough of this jibber jabber. Let's talk to these guys about what the heck they do and why they do it. So let's start with talking for a minute about, what is Commerce Bank doing here? What are you guys doing? Why are you in Indiana? What do you do for Commerce Bank?
Great question, Rob. So this is Ed. We at Commerce Bank issue payments. So we are a traditional bank that does a lot of moving of money. But we are here today in Fishers to talk about moving from old style payments, drafts, checks, paper payments, to digital payments, electronic payments through different methods, basically getting payments to our customers, insurance company customers, the way they pay insurance companies and the way they deserve to be paid.
And I'll chime in on how we got here. 156-year-old bank, I think we said, based out of Kansas City, brick and mortar all through the Midwest, but obviously a large touch throughout the nation for payments. We got into payments in the 90s and started to get into healthcare and then construction. And we said, hey, what vertical makes the most sense to go into next? And insurance claims payments made a lot of sense. You have this great claims experience, and then you say, okay, let the 7 to 10 day wait begin for your check. So we said, gosh, there's a lot of friction there. Let's see how we can solve this. And found out that only a very, very small fraction of the top 200 insurance companies were doing digital payments. So, with our power as a bank to be able to do digital payments and that being a need in the industry, it made total sense for us to jump into that as well. We made our first payment for an insurance company 6 years ago and now make millions of payments a year.
Wow. So that wasn't that long ago.
Right. 2018 was when our Prefer Pay portal was put in place, and we issued our first digital payments for an insurance company.
Why is it so late? It seems like this digital payment revolution is just coming later. I guess I would have assumed it would have been earlier on.
Yeah, adoption within the insurance space has been real challenging, Lee. So the key there is insurance companies don't move quickly. We all know that, right? We're in the insurance industry. It takes a long time for them to move the ship, turn the ship around. Mm-hmm. It also, and when you're at an insurance company, as I was for many years, it's challenging to actually get a project that is kind of customer experience focused to compete with the revenue producing projects.
So I have a question for you. Like, I have Venmo, right? And PayPal.
Right.
Through my bank, I use Zelle.
Right.
So I don't understand, why can't the carriers just say, you know what, we're going to do digital payments. I'll just use Venmo and do it that way.
So they can. The challenge there is those third parties often introduce additional fees. So what we have found is that it's easier to work as a bank with the rails that are built internally to the banking system. So federal banking system, you've got Nacha rails, and then we partner with Visa to deliver payments through the Visa rails. And those payments tend to be cheaper than using a Venmo, a Zelle, a PayPal, because they're additional costs and just an extra step between getting a payment from a business to a consumer and getting it into their bank account. So we issue push to debit payments that go directly into your checking account that's related to that debit card, and it can be pushed there in minutes.
There's many payment companies out there. What is better about a bank doing it? Is it just like you said, because of all the different federal guidelines and just different complications that could occur?
Yes, great question. So it starts with the regulatory bodies that govern banking industry overall, right? So when you think about it, I used to think when I was with an insurance company that the insurance industry was heavily regulated. And I've been with a bank now for a year, and I realized that banking industry is really heavily regulated.
Yes.
So there's a lot of security that goes along with that is just embedded in the banking system. Then as you think about challenges like fraud, that just brings exposure and risk to insurance companies. And insurance companies obviously are quite risk averse when it comes to their finances.
Yeah.
They're good at managing risk and pricing for risk, but when it comes to dealing with their own financials, they are very conservative. The other thing is you've got the ability to move money within a bank that has national banking exposure and the national banking presence. And then you've also got the ability to basically act as an InsureTech and build out a technology to deliver those payments to consumers on the behalf of an insurance company. So if you think about commerce as a potential partner versus, let's say, an InsureTech as a potential partner, that InsureTech is going to have to either work with your treasury bank or you're going to have to work with their treasury bank as an insurer. And that gives you kind of a three-legged relationship. If you worked with commerce, you're working with us. We have the ability to move the money. We also have the technology to move that money.
Gary, I want to ask you about introducing this product into a space where it hasn't necessarily been before, and dealing with people. I mean, I would assume one of the complications is you're coming to people and saying, hey, we can automate your payments or we can digitize your payments, but that might make their brains explode because it's going to mess with their whole workflow. It's going to break things to do that. Is that what you're running into?
We run into it every once in a while. It's a great question as well. And coming from the industry and being with Copart Auto Auctions for 17 years and insurance replacement before that for 5, 6, 7 years, putting a great idea in front of an insurance customer and thinking that it makes a lot of sense and then having that actually gain some traction sometimes is two different things. And a lot of it has to do with the priorities that they're dealing with. I mean, every insurance company is either rebuilding their claim system or rolling something else out or looking at revenue producing projects that they have in place. And so it's not, even though you have a great idea that really has traction right now, it doesn't always move fast. And so going and saying, okay, doesn't it make sense that you are all battling for this great claims experience? Don't you want to be the one that goes ahead and says, wouldn't you like your money right away directly into your debit account, ACH into your, checking account, that sort of thing? And they do. And you still do run into those roadblocks. But the great thing is they don't really have to change their processes. They can go through their current processes that go ahead and take that check to their check processing, but then they just change it and send it over to us through Badge Filer API. And it goes through the same thing and goes to our portal and gives the claims person or the claimant or the insured or the vendor their choice of how to receive their payment. So it's catching on. It's just us having us getting our voice out there and having people understand how easy it is with our great implementation team and how easy it is to roll this out.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the portal? Like, what is the actual experience that the insured has whenever they're receiving a claim?
Yeah, great question, Lee. So as Gary mentioned, the experience on the adjuster side is the same. And that adjuster will adjudicate the claim, push the pay button, and instead of sending a check file or record out to a check file, it sends a message over to Commerce's portal and says, can you please issue this money to this individual? And we can send that out via either email or text. And that individual will get an invitation to go onto the portal, authenticate that they are the person who is supposed to receive that money, and go in and choose which of the methods that, as Gary had mentioned, which of the methods they want to receive that payment via.
And so when people are putting in their personal information, that's staying with you and not the insurance company. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And in the era of PCI compliance police all over the place, that's important for insurance companies to offload that risk to a financial institution.
Absolutely. I think that's a huge, huge thing.
It takes out a lot of the friction that we're used to and trying to get somebody a payment altogether. And one of the important parts of that portal, I've used a couple from insurance companies. I've talked to people endless times about what's really important. And with us to authenticate and not have to use logins and passwords and make it easy for that person to say, okay, I want my money. Here's how I want to get it, and be able to, it does patterning. It enters the numbers for you or dashes for you. So there's just no tripping over the process in getting your payment sent through. Get an email that says the payment's coming, and it's just not clunky at all. We've worked really hard to make it very easy on the user end.
That's wonderful. So you're saying that the insured can decide how they want to get paid. What is the most preferred method? How are insureds picking to be paid?
With us, we've noticed about 70% of our customers choose direct to debit, and that can happen very quickly. And, our customers can adjust the thresholds on there if they want to.
What is direct to debit? I don't really understand that.
Direct to debit is basically using your debit card account. It can go to your checking or a separate bank account that your debit card goes to. Okay. And that money goes directly into that debit account that you name on the card. Or we actually have the smartphone capability of scanning that debit card as well and putting that money there.
So that's different than an ACH or a direct payment?
It is.
Direct deposit?
And I'll let my banking guy tell you a little bit about ACH. But what's so cool about direct to debit is the quickness of it. ACH can take 2 to 4 days. It's usually on the lower end, but there's certain things that can slow that down a little bit. Okay. And then they can have e-check and traditional check as well.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I could just expand a little bit. So the direct to debit process that we have actually uses the Visa rails. So if you think about using your debit card at a department store or a convenience store, you go in, you put your debit card in, you punch in your 4-digit code, and the money comes straight out of your account and pays for whatever goods or services you're buying. Those rails can work in the opposite direction, and Visa's found a way to actually push money to the account from a business. So what we do is actually shove that money down those rails and get it there in a minute or less. In a prior life, I spent 35 years at Progressive Insurance. One of the experiences we had early on, we had an individual who had a total loss in the auto and in the auto claim world, and had a check mailed to them and was expecting to get it in 7 to 10 days. We were actually piloting at that point, and we were in Las Vegas. He came into the office and wasn't quite thrilled with not having received that payment.
Yeah.
So we explained to him that we had a new process, asked him if he had a debit card. We're in the lobby of the claims branch, and he says, yes, I do. And we said, well, we can push the money into your account right away. We canceled that check. We issued him a digital payment. He went into the portal on his smartphone. He used the debit card to get that money, and within a matter of minutes, the money was in his account.
Yeah.
Within 10 minutes, he was walking out the door, a satisfied claimant, which is not exactly an easy thing to do in the auto world for sure, and I'm sure it's the same in the property world. You've got a very satisfied claimant who's now going out to a dealership to get themselves a new vehicle.
And Lee, on the experience, the customer experience that you mentioned, going a little further on that, and a benefit to the customer who's sending out the payment is the way that the site can be branded and completely adjusted for each company that uses it. Even the messaging down to the customer that it's sent out to, your payment is on its way from ABC Insurance to the portal, and stepping them through with the information, being able to add documents and add, explanation of benefits and anything like that. It It basically takes the whole process of a check and any information you would send out with that check to a digitized process that you can send that information to as well. So it's all branded. Thank you very much. All of your logos and everything. And our implementation team works through with you on that to go ahead and make that your whole customer experience for the company as well.
What if there's multiple parties on a check? What if the check needs to be made out to more than one person? What do we do? Do we just send out a paper check and do it the old school way?
Yeah, great question, Lee. So actually, we could, but the problem is we should be solving for all the use cases, right? And especially in the auto world, that's often a time, and even in the property world where you've got two owners of a property. So what we've done is we've actually found a way to digitize that process, as Gary had mentioned. So what happens is both of those individuals will get an invitation to go into that Prefer Pay portal and choose who is going to receive that payment. So we work with the insurance company to make sure the adjusters are delivering that experience to the payees in an appropriate way, right? So adoption is really critical here. If you can make sure that the adjuster is setting the expectation that they're going to have a two-step process, the first step is they're going to select who actually receives that payment. And then after that, they're going to actually receive that payment and put it into their account. So each of them will get an invitation. They will hopefully pick the same person in the portal. Once they've chosen the same person, then the person who they chose to receive that payment will actually receive an invitation to put those funds into an account through either directed debit or ACH.
Wow.
We're not letting you guys do your normal banter back and forth, but you got us on a roll here.
This is wonderful. I love it.
But what's nice is I do want to say with the bank too, what's great about Commerce is we've looked at this from a real holistic approach. So you have some people who can help you with payments. You have some people who can help you with single party, maybe just send out a credit card for your payments to vendors, and then they have to opt out of that, whatever it is. We really want to hit that from all angles. So we can take incoming payments for insurance companies. We have portals for that. We can do vendor payments. We can do multi-party payments, as Ed just mentioned, and the vendors can be enrolled. That will take the whole list and enroll all those vendors if they're not already in our nationwide program. And then they get paid the way they want to get paid. So on those multi-party payments, they'll already know that they want to get, they already know how they want to get paid. So trying to approach it from all different angles.
Is the carrier the customer, or are there other entities that you work with in the insurance space other than just the carriers directly?
Great question, Rob. So typically carriers are customers, but we can also work with anybody who's ultimately issuing a payment. So think about third-party administrators of claims services. If they're issuing those payments, then they could be customers of ours. And as we think about the insurance world, we're not limiting ourselves just to claims. We can also issue premium refunds, and we can, as Gary mentioned, handle any AP payments as well.
So you might do business with somebody like an Alacrity, like a service provider, depending on the kinds of services that they're providing to the marketplace.
Absolutely. It puts another arrow in their quiver to say, listen, we're going to do all these great things for you. And we also provide on our end an entity that does the digitized payment at the end for you. So I'm really trying to bring that whole experience together. And we've done that for some other TPAs as well.
And is it pretty easy? I mean, the startup, I would think, is not too difficult, is it? It's not a heavy lift.
No, it's not a heavy lift, and we can implement in two different ways. The first way is we can just basically take your check file, right? So in today's world, an adjuster hits pay and it writes a record out to a check file, which eventually gets printed likely at night in a batch process, and that gets mailed out. We can take that check file, have your IT team add a couple of fields to it, things like an email address or a cell phone number, and then we can actually then issue those payments from there. And that's pretty much all it takes from an implementation perspective. We then integrate back with sending you files that tell you what payments we issued, what the status of those payments are, so that you could bring that information back into both your claims system and your financial systems.
And have you guys done studies on where the market is as far as the consumer goes, the insured? What percentage of people prefer a digital payment?
The one number that I will tell you is across our program from an adoption perspective. What we see is 70% of those payments are going through to direct to debit. 26% of those payments are going to ACH, and only 4% of those payments are going to a check. So if you're fully implementing all your payments going to an electronic method, only 4% of those payees are opting out basically of electronic payments.
And I will say, from, being the guy that I am and trying to promote my company, anybody I ever talk to, especially younger people, are expecting to have an electronic payment sent to them and be able to do something through a smart device to be able to get that. I mean, that's just what they expect nowadays. So
is there any issues with adoption from older folks who might not want that, or are they accepting of the digital payment as well?
It really depends, but yes, there are some issues there with old school, we'll call it, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we still never take away the traditional check option. And if it isn't adopted, or if somebody opts out of it, then a traditional check goes ahead and gets sent. And then we have e-check as well.
Yeah, I'll give you a real good example of that. I was talking to someone earlier today who said, their Nana will never take an electronic payment. They want that check in their hand to be able to take to the bank.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing. You're meeting people where they're at. You're meeting people and giving them the option that they choose.
Who pays for all this? Or you guys is this all volunteer work that you guys are doing? And there's no compensation whatsoever.
Things I love about the commerce culture. We're just so behind so many of our initiatives that if we were really just out there trying to do it for the good of the insurance industry,
good of the world.
What's great about it is it's not your traditional subscription or anything like that, and commitment. So we are transaction based, and it's extremely affordable. Probably we usually do an ROI of about 5 to 1 of what you would currently cost you to send out a check. The American Banking Institute basically says it costs anywhere from $5.95 per check on up, and somebody will tell you longer, to get that terrible experience of 7 to 10 business days at best. Mm-hmm. And so, if we can do that for $1.50 or less with different payment types and have it go immediately, then we're winning. And so it definitely pays for itself and saves money.
Because people are already paying for it, right? You're already paying for it.
Right. So thinking about my experience actually having implemented this, that cost, that $5.95 cost, is what you're paying for as an insurance company today. And really your fully loaded cost after you issue these payments via digital method is probably closer to the $250 per transaction, under $250 per transaction. So when you ask Rob who's paying for it, ultimately it's the insurance company who then has the opportunity to pass that savings back to their insured when they find lower prices because they've had an opportunity to reduce their expenses. So it almost is free.
Almost is free.
So is it the issuing party that pays the fee?
Yeah, typically? So the issuer would pay the fee. So we charge the issuer a transaction fee, and then on a monthly basis, they'll get a statement, and then they'll pay us for whatever transactions. But they also load, balance into an account that we draw those funds from on a daily basis to support the ACH or direct to debit payments.
On a property claim where there may be 3, 4, 5 different payments that are made out to different service providers. Maybe there was a water mitigation company. Maybe there was an independent adjusting company. Maybe there was an engineer. I don't know. And then ultimately the carrier in this case would pay a transaction cost to pay each of those vendors.
That's correct. They would pay for each of those transactions.
I understand.
That actually brings up another point that I want to highlight. So when you think about a claim, a property claim, you're also going to have some potential for repeat payments, right, to an individual. So you may have some ALE payments, you may have temporary living expenses that you're paying them, and then ultimately you may pay them a final amount for whatever that claim was for, and that would be the property holder, the policy holder. We have the ability to actually store that banking information and ask them if they would like to be paid in that same method. So if they put in their debit card once, we will pass back a token to the insurance company and say, any other payments you want to issue on this claim to this claimant, then just pass us that token back. You don't have to store any of the banking information. We'll keep that on your behalf, and we'll just issue that payment via that method to that insured or claimant.
You had said earlier offline when we were talking before that the adoption of this is much greater on the auto side than on the property side. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And what do you attribute that to? Why would that be?
I think it's twofold. On the property side, the length of a claim tends to be longer, right? So just going from the point of loss to the final settlement of a claim, there's a lot more complexity to the claim. On the auto side, it's a much shorter duration, and I think that has driven adoption higher. I do think there is a lot of opportunity, especially if you think CAT and you've got people that are displaced and you want to get them funds so that they can, be put up for the night or for a set of nights while they're dislocated. And then also, you want to have them to be able to go to Walmart and get some food and clothing so that, because they've left their home in a hurry. Those are opportunities that are just, at this point, they're not tapped as well as they could be on the property side.
So do you actually have customers where you'll be providing the service to the auto department, but not the property department?
Yes, we do have some. For the most part, we work with a lot of mutual companies. And farm bureaus. And for them, we're issuing and delivering their services to both the home and the property and auto side.
One other thing that I'll mention that we're taking this a little further, as maybe I jumped your question of what's next.
No, yeah.
But we are partnering with Copart Auto Auctions, which is the largest salvage online auction in the world. And we are working with them on streamlining the letter of guarantee process.
Oh, okay.
So, getting those titles back to the owners of the vehicles faster. And if you knew that process internally and how bogged down that can get with different financial institutions and really a lack of incentive to speed those up, if we put that digitally in their world to be able to work through in their system rather than outside their system on a third party, they're going to react to that very quickly. And so we're working with Copart to speed that up. And we're also working on the mortgage side to speed that process up for mortgage and house title.
I think that's great. I mean, that is a huge area of opportunity, right? Getting that back. Because a lot of times you'll get your payment, but you might have to wait many weeks for that mortgage holder to sign off.
Right. And the goal there is to expedite that payment. Okay. And what we're also doing is we're looking to make those payments to the lending institution, whether it's property or auto, via ACH, so that payment gets there faster.
I see.
And then, so if you think about it on the auto side, where you really end up with the value is everybody wins. They get out of that rental expense sooner. The insured gets into a new vehicle sooner. The lien holder on that has the opportunity to present to the customer, the claimant, hey, we know you lost your vehicle. We just paid off we get the insurance payment to pay off your loan. Would you like a new loan for your next vehicle? We can work to get you into that. So it's kind of win-win-win situation.
That's a neat thing.
Where does the future of payments go, or the future of these kinds of services? Where's it going down the road? Where's it heading?
Well, I'd like to think that it's headed down the same road as what virtual claims were, 10 years ago. Everybody wants that process to move faster, wants it to move virtually. When it comes to maybe AI taking care of things in the beginning, and then a virtual estimate or, photos going through that to make it happen faster. And then at the end of that, it only makes sense that if you've given them that great claims experience, to get them their money immediately through virtual payments. So it's on everybody's roadmap. It really is. Yeah. It's a matter of us getting in there and prioritizing it and letting them know that we do most of the heavy lifting and can roll it out very quickly. So we're almost there.
Yeah. I mean, I would think with the exception of my wife, everybody would prefer to have the money show up in their account than to wait for a check.
I would think so.
I would think so as well. Yeah. One of the other things, Rob, I'll add on to that is being a bank and being in the forefront of payment methodologies and payment development. We're in a key position. We're in a unique position to be able to leverage whatever we learn in that payment space and are bringing to other markets, we can bring it to the insurance market. So it's nice to have this vertical along with all the power of the bank to go along with it and bring the two together and marry them up.
That's great.
Are you involved in the health space also? With health insurers?
Yes, we are involved heavily in the healthcare space. We've got a vertical in healthcare, and it's more in the integration of receivables to the hospitals and offering payment options to the patients that have that owe the hospitals money. But we've also got a wealth of relationships with very large insurance or with very large healthcare organizations. And we think there's opportunity somewhere down the road to marry that up with our insurance vertical as well.
Yeah, because there's the other way around here. And that's the insureds who, of course, have to pay the carriers.
Yep. You've hit the nail on the head there.
We've worked with quite a few newer insurance companies and some of your startups to help them with that holistic approach and being able to intake payments and make different types of payments. And quite frankly, in that position, they're more apt to use us. And you don't have to. One thing that we might not have said earlier, you don't have to switch carriers to use us. There's ways that we can do this and the ways that we can fund the accounts. It works better and it's more convenient to open up an account to fund it through Commerce Bank. But that used to be one of the roadblocks. Like, we're not leaving our carrier. You immediately go to the controller or somebody in finance. They're like, well, we're not leaving ABC Bank. And so we've made that so it's not an issue anymore.
And so your API shows up white labeled on somebody's website, right? And said, do you want to pay your premium? Click here.
Correct.
And it takes it through the payment page. You enter your policy number or whatever.
Like we were never there, just making them look real good. The other thing I'll mention too on the back end for the customer experience, back to, with security, back to some people that I saw smile earlier today when I mentioned that we handle all the positive pay OFAC. And if we are sending out a traditional check, we handle the sheetment as well. And we start to see people perk up when we mention that. So again, trying to cover all of the bases.
I saw that word. What does that mean?
A sheetment. So a sheetment is the handling of abandoned property at the state level. So if I was to write you a check as a company, so I write Rob Beller a check for $7, and Rob Beller never cashes that check. According to the state of California, I will have to remit that check over to the state of California after I've done some due diligence trying to find you. And then at that point, the state will hold those funds and continue to try and find you through public notices. And if you don't go get that money, Rob, then that money will be used by the state of California in who knows what way, shape, or form.
And I'm sure in a very effective and efficient manner.
Well, I will say,
I have to add that.
Absolutely. I will say just in the name of a sheetment, looking around the table or in our virtual meetings, when you mentioned that we take over that process, there's people who are responsible for that within insurance companies that say, that's all I needed to hear. Hallelujah. Thank you.
Well, listen, we've loved having you guys on, and we've wanted to have you on for a while, and to have you on from our home office, from the world headquarters.
World headquarters.
Illustrious world headquarters.
Alacrity Services Group is even makes it all the better. And thanks to Lee Boyd for schlepping all the
dragging all this recording equipment up here.
I hope these guys appreciate it. I hope they're doing something nice for you as a result.
I hope you appreciate it.
I can definitely tell you how much we appreciate it, because we watched him have to set this up, and it's he's not a roadie.
All that.
He is not a roadie.
One last thing for full transparency. So as we've been working on getting this particular episode organized and ready to go, Ed and Gary have reached out to tell us which of them is the cute one and which of them is the smart one.
Yeah.
I'm glad we don't have video.
Thank you for that, Ed.
With that said, Rob, I want to know, if we did a good job, can we have those custom avatar caricatures that you guys have on your website? Ed and I both want one of those.
Absolutely not. Those were originally painted by Picasso, and he's no longer living. So that's not happening.
Well, thank you very much for inviting us to do this. It was a pleasure on behalf of me and Gary. I'd like to say that Lee has done a great job hosting us here. So thank you, Lee, for being a great host.
Yeah, you'll be receiving a survey that we asked you to fill out about what kind of host he's been. So
we'll be sure to be very honest on that.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So, Lee, I kind of like these remote broadcasts. What do you think about that?
Yeah. It's kind of weird to be in the same room with the guest, but yet have you on the video. So it's a little strange.
I saw you struggling with that.
It was strange because I want to give them the attention. I want to look them in the eye. But at the same time, I'm waiting on you to wave at me and say that it's your turn to talk.
All that is interesting. But what's more interesting is, how pervasive and far-reaching digital payments are. I mean, let's face it. They're here and it's just getting bigger.
Yeah, it really is a neat thing. I keep saying, I can't believe it took so long, right? I can't believe it's taken so long for us to get to this point, but really grateful for Ed and Gary to come on and to visit with us and tell us all about what they're doing out there.
And they're loyal listeners, right?
Yeah, Ed is. I don't think Gary ever listens, but Ed is a loyal listener.
So my boss, who both you and I are incredibly fond of,
right?
We won't mention his name, Randy Thornton. He refers to our CRM as the single source of truth.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the F&O InsureTech podcast.
We are the single source of truth.
We are the single source.
Single source for all things InsureTech.
Digital payments.
Yeah.
AI tools.
Yeah.
Platforms in the insurance industry.
Isn't it funny? You think about all the news that you hear about there. All these companies are getting gobbled up by other companies. And if you're like, I've never heard of that InsureTech. Well, then hop on to F&O InsureTech because we probably did a podcast with them.
We probably did. In fact, there's big news today, which we won't go into because we went into it at the top of the show.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to say what we say every time. Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Gary. Loved having you guys. Great information. Appreciate you. Appreciate the people at Commerce Bank helping us to get it done. And appreciate you for being with us. So until next time.
Goodbye, everybody.